I remember the exact moment when I quit my teaching job and I was full-time in music. And that was a very scary moment, but luckily it was just me. So I completely respect and understand that trepidation. But what I've found generally is when you make that leap, circumstances work around you and you make it work.
Welcome to the Stay at Work Home. We are here to question the prevailing assumptions about the meaning of life, work, and the purpose of people. Instead of being torn apart by our vocations, we want to be pulled together. Come along with us as we change our picture of the good life and pursue the home as God intended, one that worships through work together. Hey everybody, welcome to the Stay at Work Home. I'm Keith.
I'm Becky.
And today we have a special treat. We have David and Karrie Fraser, the founders of Bunkie Life, who we have a very, shall we say, intimate relationship with. I mean, we're very entangled. So welcome.
Welcome.
Yeah, I just want to be clear, just for the sake of the clarity, entangled, but not swingers. Just to be super clear with that. Yeah.
Good clarification. I appreciate you, David.
Just in case there was any misunderstanding.
We live in a hole every once in a while. I realize that we say words that mean things that they realize they mean. So yeah, good call.
Yeah. So good luck explaining what that means. It's the
no,
TV
we don't.
thing. It's the Sling TV thing. It gives them extra channels. It's free or something. I don't know.
Clear. Good.
Okay. So David and Karrie now own and run, as they have founded Bunkie Life. They create small cabin kits that you can build with a few friends or family in 3 or 4 days over a weekend. In Canada, usually without permits. Or a second mortgage, and in the United States without a contract or a second mortgage, and maybe without permits, depending on where you live, because it changes from place to place. At any rate, it's pretty awesome. It's interesting how that got started and why for them. But to me, the greatest part of their story and their life for the purpose of this podcast is that David has never had a real job. That is to say, David has always been self-employed. In multiple avenues, he has been an entrepreneur, and now they have 5 children that they homeschool while running a company that is not at all uncomplicated. So, guys, tell us about having this stay-at-work home for the last, 15 years. How long has it been?
Yeah,
I'm married 16 coming up next month.
Yeah, so I'm married 16 years. I did have a very brief stint prior to marriage as a teacher, but it was kind of part-time, and I was performing music full-time. So I guess I've never had a full-time real job. It's probably a better way of putting it.
Tell us about the music. I want to hear about your music life.
And how did you meet?
And how you met. Yeah.
That feels like a long time ago. So we met on a website called ChristianCafe.com, which is like a dating singles website. Cool. I don't know if it still exists. Who knows?
I don't think it does.
Should we put a link in the show notes? Just kidding. Maybe.
Yeah, probably.
I checked last week. It was
oh, you should look at it. Good to know. Yeah. It's like Tinder for Christians. Yeah, just picture Tinder for Christians.
It is.
David's in trouble. Or Karrie's in trouble. I don't know.
No, but yeah, we met on that website. And at that point, I was performing full-time as basically a pub musician. So I travel around and play universities and colleges and that sort of thing. That feels like a different lifestyle.
It does. It feels like a whole different lifetime.
Yeah. So I roped Karrie into the business of performing. She started playing drums. That was our initial foray. So
she was a drummer.
She was a drummer.
Well, I was not a
before.
drummer before I met David. But the first question I asked is, who gets paid second after the lead guy? And he's like, the drummer. And I was like, done.
Yeah. I
will learn the drums.
That's awesome.
So we had that going. And then, this is in our 20s. So we got married youngish, like 24 and 23, I think. And we were performing, we were traveling. And then when we had our first daughter, Evie. That was around the time when I started realizing, I don't know if I can be in a pub 7 nights a week. I just don't know if it works for our lifestyle. And I was reading books like Timothy Ferriss's 4-Hour Work Week and a bunch of other kind of self-development books. And I realized as much as it's awesome that I get to do what I get to do, it'd be nice if I could be a little more proactive with designing, like, how's it going to work with home life? And I want to be around this new daughter. She's so fun. And so we kind of started the path of like, how do we be a little more proactive about designing things? And so that was when what I essentially did, and this might be useful for folks, is I looked at everything that we did to make income. We had a bunch of different, pubs and universities and colleges and weddings. Weddings were kind of not on my radar, but we had done some because people liked us. And then I sorted it all by like, how fun is it? How much do I like doing this? How lucrative is it? And then how much time does it suck away from family? There's kind of those three dimensions, like a big spreadsheet. And then weddings floated to the top. They were profitable. They didn't take that much more time, and I enjoyed doing them ish. They're fun. And so we pivoted that year. I think it was probably Evie's second year. I don't know, but it was
Something
relatively
like
on after Evie. And we pivoted to weddings, and we still did pubs. I still played every Tuesday at my Irish pub, but on the weekends we were over a couple of years transitioned to doing weddings. And so it was just the idea that I can design things. I can proactively be like, what do I want to do? And I was proactive about just kind of building slowly towards that. That was really transformative for us.
Yeah.
Karrie, do you have a different way of seeing that? You started to smile.
It was just like, it's like so easy to look back now and be like, oh yeah, this is what we did. And it was like, at the time, it just felt like this huge blob of.
See, I'm the person that sees the future, right? And help and like, we're going to go in that direction. Carrie's the one that actually makes that direction happen. So she has no idea what's going on. And it feels like we're just doing one random step after another. But I'm like, we're going in this direction.
Yeah.
So,
And the logistics spiral around in your head like a hurricane all the time. And like, how are we going to actually make this function sometimes?
Yeah.
I don't know anything about that.
The way Becky has said it is I'm like, hey, I got an idea. Let's build a bridge over the river so we can go over the river and have a really good time over there. And there'll be barbecues, and there'll be Ferris wheels, and there'll be music, and it's going to be great. And Becky is trying to figure out where like all the pieces of the bridge are coming from and how they're going to go together and how they're going to get paid for.
Well, and then I try to find another way around, actually, is often the case as well. And sometimes my way wins, occasionally, very rarely, but.
So what was
I think
next after?
God meant to put people like that together. Like you got your bridge builders and you got your envisioners. And I think like, at least for us, it's kind of worked. There's a lot of tension in that though. I don't know if you guys experience the same thing. And trying not to, why can't you be more like me to the other person all the time? I'm preaching this to myself as much as anyone else in the room.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, I think too, for us, until the last little bit of time, we were fighting with almost like the third wheel called a job, right? It was the military for a long time, and then it was other employers. And that component part where, it feels like that kind of holds a lot of the pieces to your life story. So all of these visionary ideas, like how they can weave together, it feels like there's so many more details to try to figure out. So in some ways, even though there've been more unknowns since Keith left his job, there's been less people having to make decisions. It's just us.
Yeah.
And we kind of try and fail on our own 2 feet rather than having to incorporate the man as much.
So like you had said recently, I don't think you said it to me. I think you just admitted it to somebody else, that all the stuff I was doing over the last 5 years or so that was kind of leaning in the direction of being self-employed, of having a different life. It now kind of makes sense, but it didn't before.
Right.
You guys were kind of always there because you were doing it. I mean, but Karrie, did you feel like you always got it, or did it click one day?
Say that question again. I'm not sure I'm going to capture it.
Like, was there a point at which your spot in the vision and believing the vision like happened, or was it just always like, yeah, David's got great visions, I want to follow him off cliffs all day long?
I think a lot of it at the beginning with David, like in his music career and stuff, was like I could see that he was different, like that he kind of broke the mold. He didn't have the same mindset that all the other musicians out there had. He had like a very clear path, and he's like, the status quo, playing for peanuts or just playing for free and all this, like, that's not how you do this. You need to do this. You need to build this following. Then you need to do this. And he had a very clear path. So I was like, this is not just like a weekend fun thing for him. So then I was just trying to like get behind that and help him achieve that vision. Cause I just thought like, that's a great dream. And I can see that we're going to do that. And I think that's how most of it is. Usually like he's had other ideas. Some of them I shoot down.
Yeah.
And then, but there's a lot that I was like, I can just get behind. And after that initial, like the pub thing and was successful, and then the wedding thing and he was successful, I think that's the point where it's just like, you know, and then I had a taste obviously with that of being like self-employed, and I was just like, there's no going back now. I could not go back.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I kind of roped Karrie into the vision was already kind of happening when we first got married. So like I already had my calendar full of gigs when Karrie and I got married. So it wasn't like that transition is it's scary, because I remember the exact moment when I quit my teaching job and I said, screw you teaching. And I was full-time in music. And that was a very scary moment, but luckily it was just me. I didn't have 3 or 4 kids in tow. So I completely respect and understand that trepidation. But I don't know if you found this, but what I found generally is when you make that leap, the universe or God or, circumstances, probably a better way to put it, kind of work around you, and you make it work to a large extent as well. If you just take that leap, you find that it works out. However, there's going to be probably a way lower income for the first 3-4 years because you suck at everything when you start, and everyone does that. Everyone does. And what you got to factor in is, okay, I'm paying down the cost of ignorance. I don't know how to do basic taxes. I don't know how to do blah, blah, blah. I'm paying that down over years 1, 2, and 3, so that in years 4, 5, and 6, we can actually be ahead.
Yeah. Do you feel like, David, when you were, it sounds like you were in the business mindset with your music business, and had you already been kind of schooling yourself on the fact that like these dips were going to happen, that you knew to expect a few years, or is that just something you experienced and you're like, could see it in the rear view, or had you prepared yourself for it?
Probably, I'd say now in retrospect, both.
Okay.
So we're experiencing a dip in Bunkie. If we're going to get hammered with tariffs, what I found is it's usually 2 or 3 good years, 1 year where you think you're going to lose everything, 2 or 3 good years, 1 year you think you're going to lose, with a hopefully upward trajectory for our entire professional life, even as we transition from pubs to weddings to Bunkies. And so there was, at the first couple of times I didn't realize it, but I definitely have always been tripling down, like, how do I educate myself? Not necessarily like formal education, but listening to podcasts, reading books, and trying to still even now continue that as much as I can.
We never stop learning. We never should stop learning. And to agree, even with Bunkie life, you have no clue what's around the corner, any given political administration, etc. Right? So things can change at any moment.
Making that jump, like you talked about, it's like once you do it, all of a sudden, like you're like, oh, things work out kind of naturally. Is it the universe, God, circumstance? Well, it's the universe and circumstances which God created that are orderly and actually tend towards people working and receiving a reward for it. And if you're available, work just kind of keeps coming to you. And at some point, you've got to say no to things and figure out, what it is that you really want to do. And that's why you're still playing gigs every night of the week, right?
For her. You serenade her every day.
I think that's exactly it. You do have to figure out what you say no to. As you go through that process, it's like, how can I say no to more things, and things that are good, but not the best or not better.
And sometimes it's scary because it's like you can say yes to the things that you are comfortable, right? It's easy to say yes to those things, but it's hard to let go of those things when the thing you're going to lean more on is more uncertain.
And it always is, because you haven't done it yet.
Right. I think there were things about homeschooling, which we didn't go into homeschooling or going into parenting. We were not at all planning to homeschool. We only knew weird people that homeschooled, and not successful people, not even successful in the way that they wanted. Like they wanted to protect their kids. Well, it didn't really work. And they still had disastrous choices as adults and things like that. And so we weren't aiming that direction, but over little bits of time, like the Lord kind of pulled pieces. Matt Walsh had an article one time that talked to me about like what is really the value of college? Like there's this one track that everybody thinks education is supposed to go down. Everybody gets this high school diploma, then you go to college, and then you go get the job to pay off the college that you just went and did that over.
And anything else is irresponsible.
Right.
Yeah.
And our kids were pretty young when I read that, and it just made me go, I can break up with the idea of a traditional route. There are other ways to do this. There are other ways to be successful adults. And really that kind of, even in some ways, that set the stage to, even though I would say we went through a bumpy period when we were starting this whole not having a normal job thing, him not having a normal job, but are already opting out of one expected known path with homeschooling kind of led us a direction of, well, we can try this in a different area of life. And we're seeing it all really works well together now too. So
how did you stop doing gigs?
Well, COVID helped a lot with that because it murdered live entertainment generally. So we had 60 some weddings on the calendar in 2020, 65 weddings or something like that.
Yeah.
And we ended up performing 2 that year.
Oh my goodness.
So we were kind of forced to double down on Bunkie Life at that point. And Bunkie Life was also, and during COVID, everyone wanted to build a deck and a Bunkie. So it was a big boost to what we were doing, I would say.
Yeah.
So yeah.
How did you start doing that?
Yes. Tell us about the beginning of Bunkie Life. When did that happen in your story? And how did
So we had our first daughter. She was about 2 or 3, and my parents were sick of sleeping on the couch to come visit. And it became just like, where are we going to sleep, David? And we can't keep doing this, blah, blah, blah. So my mom started texting me a bunch of like yurts and RV listings and a bunch of stuff like that. And we even actually looked into an addition, but very expensive. And I didn't want to live in drywall for 6 months. And so stumbled upon the idea of like this Bunkie. It's an Ontario term, which is like a small little cabin. You put it in your backyard. It's like a bolt-on bedroom in the backyard.
Like an overflow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you build it at a certain size, you kind of skirt a lot of the permit rules here in Ontario and in most places across North America. So we built our first Bunkie in 2015. And before I actually pulled the trigger and bought it, I had it listed on Airbnb. So I took like a stock photo of the Bunkie. I took a couple photos of like our landscape, like because we kind of live in the country. It's
true entrepreneur.
Yeah. So I'm like, let's see if we got demand here before we introduce supply. And people started like trying to book it. And so I'm like, sweet, this is going to work. So I was literally finishing the floorboard and blowing up the air mattress as our first guests arrived. So it's been cash flow positive from like day one.
Amazing.
That's actually, we have a very similar first Bunkie story too, but anyway.
Yeah. Well, it makes sense, right? Like why, like, I don't love the idea of let's risk like our whole family's livelihood and a bunch of savings on this like untested idea. I think it's a really bad move, to be honest, when you could usually think of a way to test your crazy idea out in a safer way.
I really like that you said that, because I think sometimes too, our tendency is to like, just give it a try, just jump out there. And, I wouldn't say we say with faith per se, but Keith does, what did you say? Point, shoot, aim often.
Ready, fire, aim.
Ready, fire, then aim.
Yeah.
But there are ways to think around the testing period. And that's and actually, I just didn't know we had already been I didn't think of it in such terms of we had already been testing a lot of things actually over the years. He were never just employed. He was always trying to find various, and it wasn't necessarily because we needed the income.
I needed the intellectual outlet.
Needed the stimulation and
outlet. Yeah.
And the building of good things has been always something Keith has wanted to do in every realm.
Yeah.
So
I think what I'm coming to as like we get more Airbnbs and stuff is that like hospitality is like a family calling for us, because it's not just having like the Airbnb stuff. It's also just welcoming international students, local university, and home group Bible study, stuff like that. Like we really thrive on that, and just welcoming people. And the Airbnb thing does somehow fit into that. Do you guys think like, is there something that is your family? It's not just an individual, but it's your family calling. Is it running the organization and providing jobs? Is it inspiring people? What is it?
We put together what do you call it? Not a rallying cry. We
call it the rallying cry.
Oh, yeah.
I guess the family values.
Yeah.
I would not say hospitality is that, because only half of us like to host people.
It took
but
me some time
yeah,
anyway.
We
I
put
think-
together like a family. What was the term? That sentence that we put together that describes our family.
mission
Core values.
statement or whatever.
Yeah, I guess the core values
mission.
statement.
Yeah.
I don't know what
Yeah.
it is, but it, basically we read it every week. We get together every Thursday on our hot date night, or hot date afternoon.
Lunch.
and yeah, we talk about it. So I mean, for us, I know I'm strongly motivated by freedom. So like, how do I create freedom for others? How do I get a little more degrees of freedom for our family? So a lot of that is kind of, when I think about why did I build the bunkies in the backyard to rent out, it was so that I wouldn't be tied to any one thing, and like I felt like at the time. And then why are we hiring these people? I like to give them like a job, and and ultimately our product kind of serves people in ways like your family. You have built these extra Airbnbs. You already had one, but you're building extra, or it's just the freedom to host family, or it's the freedom to connect with whoever. So I don't know if I'm articulating that very well, but I think if I was to put what motivates us, what are like bigger, drasticer actions, it's usually like, okay, how do we add more kind of personal autonomy over our own lives? It's been a driving force for me. And I think you've kind of bought into that pretty strongly.
Yeah.
Like when you think about where do we want to live in the world?
Yeah.
It's a lot of it's motivated by where we're going to be kind of freest to raise our kids, freest to hopefully run a business if it still exists next year. So, yeah.
I'm reading a book right now called Leisure, the Basis of Culture. It's kind of old. It's a German guy. It's translated into English now. And one of the things he says in there is like there's a difference between people that are just workers and people that are free. And he talks about like in classical education, they make this distinction between, liberal arts, right? Liberal arts, the artes liberalis, that's the arts of free people, the arts of rule and self-rule. And then there are the servile arts, the arts of servilis. So like anything that's just a skill that's there to survive or work for somebody else, that's a servile art. But the freeing or the arts of the free are different. And they don't contribute to your survival, but they contribute to greater thriving and so forth. And he said, basically, if you're compelled by your circumstances to sell your labor for money to survive, you're not free. Mm-hmm. And so that to me kind of crystallized, like, slavery is not just like this tight thing that we've made it that existed, before 1865 in the United States, and then has continued to exist in many places to some great extent today. But there's another sense in which there's gradations of it. If you're compelled that you've got to go do something for somebody else to survive.
You were talking about those gradations, and then that was kind of when you cut off.
Okay, yeah. So what I said, I think I got pretty well finished up, that it's going to record on my end. So if you're compelled to sell your labor to somebody else in order to survive, you're not really free. Like you might not be a slave proper, but you're not free. That seems to be what you're hitting at. Like you want to be free and you want others to be free.
Yeah. And I mean, it's not politically correct to say or observe, but the reality is if you're in credit card debt, if you're in debt, there's a reason the Bible tells us that the debtor is slave to the lender, right? There's a reason that these things, the word bond is derivative of bondage. There's a reason that these things all exist, and you're born into, I don't know exactly what it's like in Canada, America, but it's like hundreds of thousands of dollars of debt. So you kind of start behind the eight ball. Is modern day, is it comparable to serfdom? Probably not. But there, like you said, there's a spectrum here that is not politically correct to talk about, and also just not socially acceptable to talk about. Because if you point out that like the guy working the 9 to 5, in some respects, is beholden to the boss of the job, that it can be kind of this weird statement. It's almost like you poking fun at someone in bondage. You want to be, there are other sensitivities. There's a very sensitive topic, but I completely agree. And I'm very passionate about this exact topic. So you articulate it in a way I hadn't really thought of before, but that's insightful. And it's we look back at history and go, it's nothing like it was today, but really there's a lot more in common we have today. The reality is, for most of human history, people have been in actual slavery, like full on slavery. Most people were serfs. Most people's ancestors were in a feudalistic system or just like completely subjects. No, I don't know if that much has changed.
There's chosen slavery. Like most people have the freedom, no external compulsion to remain in slavery, but they have to choose to get out of it or not. Yeah.
Sometimes they have to believe that it's possible. And that actually is probably the mental slavery is probably the greatest problem. And
it's a good Bob Marley reference there.
Okay. That's exactly what I was going for, by the way, of course.
Nailed it.
But our systems nationally, of course, I always love to poo-poo public school, but they desire a particular type of employee to come out of the system. And it is built in such a way to keep people, I think, mentally enslaved to not thinking they can do something different.
That's what it prepares you for.
That's what it prepares you for.
To be a cog.
To be, yeah. And even a cog in a more prolific, like a more, you could have a higher income, but you're still a cog. A doctor who has to submit to this, and not saying doctors are bad. We like them. We want them to a degree, and these are good things, but they're still.
Even the doctor, can he decide that tomorrow, no, I don't want to do that. I want to do this. Is he free to do that?
Yeah.
And most of them probably aren't.
Most of them aren't.
What you hear from, you mentioned Patrick Lencioni's kind of stuff earlier. And I think maybe it was him that has mentioned, other people have mentioned, like, it does, just because you make $400,000, $500,000, $600,000 a year doesn't mean your financial situation is better. Like, that's some of the worst financial situations that they find people in, is when they make a lot of money. So
I think that it's all about the delta between what you're earning and what your lifestyle requires. And if that gets to a certain point, you can achieve FU money at a small income. And the saddest thing is when you see a really high income person that is obviously compromising either their integrity, their morals, what they actually think and feel for their income, because you just know, like, why did all these people shill viewpoint A or viewpoint B or whatever during the last little bit, when they had a lot of money? They made a lot. They know that these people made a lot of money, and it boils down to, I would suspect that it comes back to that topic of bondage. Is that their lifestyle they built around themselves put them back into, like, like a slave mentality, basically.
Sure, you've heard, I don't know who actually said it. Was it somebody at the World Economic Forum? Was it not? But the idea that in the future you will own nothing and be happy. Well, what does that make you? That makes you a happy slave.
Yeah. Right.
And it's honestly, like, dude, like, the average Joe in any Western country is living way better than Caesar did, way better than probably even like the president of the US was 100 years ago. So overall lifestyle has gone up, like, amazing. You live longer. You're, as long as you don't eat too much, you can be healthier. And the problem is now that it's so easy to eat too much. So
it's cheaper. Yeah. It's cheaper.
So you guys, well, you mentioned basically, so the delta between what you earn and what you need for your lifestyle. That's, what is it? This rule, Parkinson's rule, that a luxury once enjoyed becomes a necessity. So basically, it's not that exactly that, but basically whatever amount of money or time is allotted to something, the something will then go on to fill it up.
Oh yeah, that's what I thought Parkinson's law was. It's like, I would think about it as the toothpaste law. If when you start, you buy that toothpaste tube, and the kids are just like, and there's like 47 pounds of toothpaste on each thing, and then towards the end, you're just siphoning off the tiny little sliver of toothpaste.
That's enough.
And you make it work because you don't have that's totally
So I think two things I want to talk about before we kill this is how do you guys deal with that? Because I think at this point, because I know that you guys are Scotch, which is a Canadian way of saying cheap.
Frugal.
And then how, while being as busy as you are with all this stuff, and Karrie, for those that don't know, like, she designs everything on CAD.
I wanted to talk a lot about what Karrie does.
Intimately involved in all the processes of the factory and logistics. I mean, when they order wood, they order like a train car plus. So how do you homeschool your kids? That's impossible, right?
Yeah. Well, we had lately, like, especially with the addition of our fifth, we've really, and I'd say with like kind of the complications that came with that birth, and like there were some scary moments, and for us it helped us like reflect on like making that core value statement for our family. What do we want to prioritize? What really means anything? And so for us it was the family was obviously like the priority, and so that meant for me, I'm having to take a step back from a lot of the things I was doing. But things like homeschooling the kids and quality time with them are even more important, I'd say, than they were already. So then we just kind of restructured life. And we are like, how do we make that happen? And so we just, okay, well, we need to keep our marriage strong. So we need to set a date night. And I'm like, well, we can't do a night. We've got kids to put to bed. So let's pick something else. Let's figure it out. So, okay, we're going to go for lunch once a week. Right. And we're going to, in our lunch, we take like 10 minutes, relook at like, I guess quarterly, we kind of like set goals for the family. And so we look at how are we doing with those? It's been really helpful. And like, just that meant we had to hire like 3 people in Bunkie life to kind of pick up some of the stuff I was doing.
And that probably on the surface of it cut profitability, right? Because it's 3 more people.
For sure.
So, but actually made things more valuable because now we have a business that doesn't just rest on Karrie's shoulders. So there's this counterintuitive thing that happens as you go, okay, like you go from, we talked about survival mode is kind of level 1. I just got to make enough to survive, right? And then there's enough to kind of be free. But then there's, okay, how do I use that freedom to better my own life, my people around me's life? And that's kind of like, we're bumping on that part of it, I think, right now. And I think that's actually, a good, healthy human progression. The older people are the wiser people that have hopefully kind of lived their life and they can help others and be charitable and I think what that counterintuitively involves, that step of like, okay, we've got enough for ourselves. How do we help other people? Is you have to go, oh yeah, I could do this thing. I could fix my own roof, but actually I could save myself the time. I can hire someone else to do it. They're going to be blessed. They're going to have an income, and it actually frees me up to do something else, maybe more productive, or maybe it's just I'll just spend time with the kids.
Yeah.
And it's like really weird. And that's a hard thing too. Because I've noticed from being in entrepreneurial circles is you can get, again, enslaved to there's always more and I can always do more and I can always earn more. And that becomes like a thing where you can just go, there's no limit to that. Mm-hmm. And that can become its own little weird enslavement. I'll tentatively say that might've been Karrie prior to her hospital trip this last little bit.
Yeah, because right? I've always looked at things and been like, if it's not rocket science, I can do that. Right. And so it's like,
you probably could do rocket science too, just from what I've seen you do. So,
but, so something breaks down in the house and it's like, all right, let me get out my tools. I'm sure I can fix this. Like
one time we were on vacation and she fixed, she ordered a part and fixed the car in the driveway of like a neighbor that would she's done awesome things like that.
But I've realized what I've really realized in the last few months is like that even though I'm saving us money, I'm costing in family time or in investing in the kids and training them and or even like in the time I could have helped the business. Right. So I've learned to kind of lately look at things more of like, if there's something that I could do and I could save a few dollars, would those dollars benefit someone else if we can afford to do that? And how much is it worth to have that time either for the company or for the kids or for David and I? And that's been a big shift, I would say.
We're not like preaching like gurus up on a mountaintop here. This is something
daily I'm struggling with. We revisit every week on how we did.
Yes. Good job setting that date to do it.
Yeah. So here's a question. you,
Right there.
for those that don't know, which is probably everybody, Karrie grew up in a family where she did not learn how to wire houses or fix cars for the most part, if I understand correctly.
I mean, my dad was like super handy, right? So like anything was like he just fixed it. Like,
but you didn't, right?
I didn't. No, I just saw that. I just saw that attitude, and I was like,
Okay.
you know, my dad was not. He grew up with nothing. Like they would have to hunt sometimes for food because his dad died right before him and his twin were born. Like they had nothing. My grandma worked to put bread on the table, and that's like all they could get. So it's not like he got some high education and he knew. He just like he was very mechanically inclined. And he just learned stuff, and then got into kind of the tool and die trade, and anything that needed, he'd think of a part that could make this machine better, and he could just envision it, draw it out, make it. And so he just had that attitude. So I think while he wasn't like taking me downstairs and showing me how to wire stuff or how to make it, he always just went and did it himself. But what I learned from him was like, it's the attitude of, hey, I can do this. I just got to think it through methodically.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
So now that you guys are, super wealthy business owners that have totally knocked it out of the park.
Never have to reconsider whether your business is doing this.
Never.
And you don't need to hesitate to call somebody else to wire your house. Okay, let me tell the wiring story real quick. Karrie did not know how to wire houses, but they were building a house, and she's like, I'm just going to wire it myself. And she looked on YouTube and figured it out and got an electrician to like oversee her. But she wired the whole
the electrical code and read it.
So that's crazy. But now that you don't have to do that anymore and you're just going to write a check to somebody else, how do you keep your kids from becoming trust fund babies now that your lifestyle is the rich and famous?
Well, it's always reminded, you guys are broke. You guys are absolutely broke. Just so you know, like this is, like you're broke. So act accordingly,
They are broke. Exactly.
I'm like Kevin McCallister's dad. I'm riding first class and they're in coach. No, I'm just joking. We don't.
Totally.
We all ride in coach.
That's right.
Yes.
I love to take the opportunity to teach them stuff like that. Like I still feel like that's important, and that's something I want to ingrain in them is that, hey, like you can do stuff, right? So
you can just do things.
Yeah. So I do love to take the opportunity, like, when what was there's something that went funky the other day with the electrical, and I'm like, it's got to be a breaker issue or something, right? So literally I took Owen down there, and Owen and I methodically worked through it, and we solved it. And he's like pumped, right? Because he fixed it. Sure. And I'll do the same, like, with just whatever kid I think is like, hey, who would really benefit from this opportunity? There's definitely stuff I love doing still just because it's so fun to do with them. But now I try and like think, okay, how can I work with one of them through this?
Right. Well, and the story, like even with your dad, like, I mean, you caught more than you were taught, right? You caught what his mindset was. And that very much like just comes out of you, which means a lot of help, especially I'm assuming you went to school, or were you homeschooled?
I went to school, but it was, we went to like a K-8 school. It was a one hallway school. Like it was one hallway. All the classes were around. So it was very small. It was in the middle of nowhere. It was like max was probably, I think K-8, probably about 200 kids maxed the school out. Oh, wow. So it was not like your typical experience.
Gotcha. So you probably had even freedom in just because you weren't having to be in the big machine there, but you weren't with your parents all the time.
Right. Yeah.
Like your kids to some degree are with you a whole lot more of their lives. And so the idea of them catching both the get to itness that you have of like, just give it a try. You can learn anything. And then David's kind of mindset of be free and produce good things and build businesses. Like those things are going to be caught and taught really just because they're seeing you do it all the time. So I think it's exciting. Your kids are going to be
Can I pause for 1 sec? Somebody's at the door for me.
You're allowed to pause.
We could just not cut this. This just all go straight together.
Nothing.
This is how life rolls. I have been approached by a 7-year-old looking for permission to ride a horse with his sister. And you've had to one of you has had to go to the door like 4 times. This is real life. This is This is every day. Anything that you want to say? What's on your heart, David, that we could close with?
Well, I would assume that the audience, I don't know the audience super well, but the people that are listening to this podcast probably have a desire in their hearts to do what you and Becky are accomplishing, right? Which is, how do we incorporate work, home life, and education all into one kind of package, right? And I think that what's come of this conversation has just been that, yeah, on the outside it looks like this crazy big risk, but there are ways to break into bite-sized pieces, like you've done and like we did, and to take smaller leaps of faith that are actually less risky than this. And that what I want to speak to is the opportunity cost. So this is the person that's in the corporate job, and maybe they got one or two kids in tow. It's not going to get any easier. And my message to you would be, it's the weight that you're feeling and the risk that you feel you're taking is only going to get heavier, and it's only going to get riskier. And you're going to find yourself having taken a really bad deal and a really terrible risk, which was the risk of status quo just kind of extending out until the end of your life. And so what I will say is, do you need to make a huge entrepreneurial leap and bet the farm on this new chinchilla business? No, you don't need to do that. But there are incremental ways you can start building your life in that direction of freedom and of self-autonomy. And I would encourage you to start that today. Like literally pause this podcast and go and do one micro step in that direction. Because if you don't, it's very easy to just drift through life. And next thing you know, you wake up and you're 65 and your kids are all off and gone, and you're kind of still in this weird corporate enslavement, as we talked about.
You're still waiting till you're done working to do the things you've always said you wanted to do.
It's not, exactly.
Yeah.
That's a good word. Now.
Do the things now. That's a good word.
Awesome. David, thank you so much.
Carrie, thank you so much.
Thank you. If you've enjoyed what you've just heard, please subscribe and share. Also, check out our website and blog, stayatworkhome.com. This episode of the Stay at Work Home is brought to you by heartlandbunkies.com. Come check out our full line of small cabin kits that can be easily assembled by a few friends or family in just a weekend for extra space for meaningful connection, or extra income, or a home office, a homeschool room, or whatever.